Hey Japan, watch out! No more colonies for you! Great, that means I can finally get my colonies back! Let's just say no.
After the defeat of Japan in the Second World War, France tried to recover its colonies stolen by the Japanese. However, the war had shown that Europeans in general, and the French in particular, were far from invincible, which led the colony of Indochina to put up great resistance, eventually becoming independent in the form of 3 countries: Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. This in turn was divided into North Vietnam, a communist republic, and South Vietnam, a capitalist dictatorship. This division was very artificial, and the South was itself plagued by communists. This was enhanced by the fact that surprisingly people do not seem to enjoy living in dictatorship. Because of this lack of support, the South Vietnamese dictator opposed the original idea of holding a vote on whether or not Vietnam should unify, knowing he would lose. This led to the creation of a group of communist revolutionaries in South Vietnam who sought to overthrow the government and unify the country, with North Vietnamese armed support. In this objective, however, they were overtaken by the head of the Vietnamese army, who assassinated the dictator, leading to a succession of several brief and unstable governments in South Vietnam. This political instability allowed the communist groups to achieve great conquests. North Vietnam was also receiving arms and money from the communist governments of China and the Soviet Union, giving them a great advantage. The United States feared that if South Vietnam fell into communist hands, the rest of Asia would follow. This led them to want to find an excuse to enter the war.
Hello, North Vietnam. You hit me. What are you talking about? Again. This is war.
So after making up a Vietnamese attack, which was then described as a communication error, the United States went straight into the war, and everything indicated that they were going to win quickly. However, the North Vietnamese leader would have been right when he said that.
For every 10 of our soldiers who end up dead, we will kill one of theirs. But they will surrender first. I really hope so.
Because of the great efforts of the North Vietnamese troops, it quickly became evident that the United States was not going to get the quick victory they wanted. The war would drag on for a long time, and this would lead to casualties that would number in the tens of thousands for the US Army. This turned public opinion against the war, and citizens began to ask themselves, what are we doing in Vietnam? This led to the fact that when Nixon assumed the presidency, one of his main objectives was to end the war by withdrawing the troops and signing a peace with North Vietnam. This goal was finally achieved on January 27, 1973, after peace was brokered at a meeting between representatives of the United States, North Vietnam, South Vietnam, and the Vietnam Revolutionary Front. With the United States out of the war, North Vietnam would win easily, and the reunification of Vietnam under a communist government would take place. The Vietnam War would represent the greatest defeat in American history and one of the bloodiest wars to ever happen. It led to the so-called Vietnam Syndrome, a pessimistic spirit in the defeated US population. They say that when you are about to die, time freezes, as a last desperate attempt of your mind to get away from what is inevitable. Maybe this is what happened to Diem, dictator of South Vietnam, when he was shot. Maybe he had a few seconds to think. Maybe enough to look his killer in the eyes and see that they were the same eyes he once had. Maybe he understood at that moment how this whole conflict was not about helping people, about forming a country that is stable and united. It was all about sending many to die to try to fill the endless ambitions of a few, who no matter how much power they had, would always want more. Maybe he realized that this made no sense, that he didn't care about ruling Vietnam or the whole world if so much had to be lost in the process. And for what? If he already had enough. Maybe it was too late.